Transcontinental race was one of my greatest cycling experiences ever. However, it was also the most expensive cycling experience ever. In this video, I will discuss not only exactly how much money I spent for TCR in 2024, but will also highlight where you could potentially save some money and estimate how much TCR might cost in 2025 and onwards. Alright, let's jump straight in. The total cost for everything related to TCR was 3,821 euros. This includes a 157 euro tracker deposit fee, which I got back. So excluding the tracker, in total I spent 3,664 euros. You know, sometimes I wish I hadn't actually calculated this. But the number itself doesn't actually tell us much. So let's go through the various expense categories to better understand where it comes from. First on the list is non-avoidable expenses. So basically everything related to the application process. This covers the application interest fee, the application itself, insurance, tracker deposit fee, medical expenses, and media licenses if you need any. The application interest fee is in place to deter people from applying who are not actually serious about racing. The tracker deposit fee is refundable but needs to be paid anyway, and there is a chance that something happens to the tracker and you lose the money. The media license fee is applicable only if you are a sponsored rider and needs to be paid for each sponsor separately. In my case, it was a cycling clothing company, Hops. My insurance was basically a bulked up travel insurance from my local bank that included coverage not only for myself, but also my equipment. A notice from a doctor is mandatory to race in TCR, and in my case this only cost 20 euros because my general practitioner was already well aware of my fitness and health. I had done a formal fitness test not long ago, so could just provide these results to my general practitioner. If I had to do the fitness test from scratch again, it would have cost me an additional 100 to 120 euros. So in my case, this was a total of 844 euros plus the 157 euro tracker deposit fee. For non-sponsored riders, that's 723 euros with the medical examination and insurance either slightly raising or lowering the fees. The next expense category on the list is traveling to the start line and from the finish. I flew from Riga to Brussels for 149 euros, then took a train to Lille for 28 and rode with my bike to Roubaix. On my way back home, I flew from Istanbul for 224 euros. All tickets included bike luggage, and the flight tickets also included an option to change the date. For me, these costs added up to 401 euro. The travel costs will not only vary greatly from person to person, but also from year to year. However, in 2025, I would expect that on average, the travel prices are actually slightly higher because the start and finish locations are less accessible. Another category that will vary a lot is equipment. Personally, I spent 369 euros. However, my strategy was to race with as little stuff as possible and to utilize as much of what I already have. There were mandatory or at least highly suggested items that I needed to buy, like a rear reflector, a bell, reflective belt and tape, and an extra rear light because you needed to have 2 pairs of lights. The rest of the equipment was tires, chain, bike service, a valve extender, fresh cleats, an aerobar razor kit, and other stuff like sunscreen, medical items, and so on. Servicing the bike was quite expensive, but of the 97 euros, 60 were for handlebar bearings that I would have needed to change anyway. Before buying the ridiculously expensive Aerobar razor kit, I experimented with making my own at a friend's garage. My main conclusions from this experience was that the razor kit really does help and that my woodworking skills are really not that great. I expect that for the majority of riders, the equipment costs will actually be higher, especially if this is your first or second ultra event. If I had just the bike and wanted to buy everything that I had for the race from scratch, I probably would have spent somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 euros. If you find this information helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so we have spent at this point well over 1,000 euros and we're only at the start line of the race. However, the good thing is that from here, tracking expenses becomes quite easy because all you do is bike, eat, and sleep. For food, I averaged 57 euros per day, and for accommodation, I averaged 62 euros per stay. The only other significant expenses was buying a sunscreen that I lost and also mobile data. I ate maybe 5 warm meals in cafes, and the rest was mostly spent at gas stations. I only visited a grocery store maybe once or every 2 days. I always bought bottled water and never drank tap water. My expenses here are probably on the upper end, but in general I eat quite a lot and during TCR I did not lose any weight. I was a bit surprised how expensive the hotels were even in the Balkans, so here you could definitely save some money. However, there are a few buts. First is I cannot overstate how big of a difference it made to have a shower, wash clothes, and sleep in a comfortable bed in an air-conditioned room. Also here, air conditioning is key because in the hotels where there was no air conditioning, in the morning I felt like I almost could have slept outside. It would not have made a difference. So you can't just pick any hotel. It has to be on your route. It has to be a private room. It has to have air conditioning. And on top of that, you're booking at the very last moment in peak season. You could of course stay in dorm rooms in hostels that are generally much cheaper if you just want to take a shower. However, I'm not sure that is such a good idea. If you decide to do this, make sure to include underwear in your equipment list. So in 2025, I expect that on average the price for accommodations would also be slightly higher just because participants will spend more time in more expensive countries like Spain, France, and Italy. Once the race was finished, my expenses still were not finished because I spent a total of 5 days in Istanbul together with my girlfriend. Even though I typically plan to finish faster, I always book my return ticket only after the race has officially ended. This allows not to worry about time during the race, and if something unexpected happens, at least finish by any means. It's one of my 10 recommendations for a successful TCR that I've talked about in a separate video. I'll make sure to link it both in the description and at the end of the video. So during these 5 days, I went in full vacation mode and spent an average of 127 euros per day, which is actually slightly higher than during the race. You could of course dart home the day after the finish to save some money. However, personally, I invested about 75% of my yearly vacation just for TCR, and it can hardly be called a vacation. So having some time at the end to spend with somebody you love was invaluable, and otherwise we probably would not have had the chance to do so. To wrap up, in 2024, I spent over 3,500 euros for everything related to the Transcontinental race. This included 844 euros in application process and media license fees, 369 euros for equipment, and 401 euro for travel within Europe. And during the race, I averaged 57 euros per day for food and 62 euros per stay in hotels, and just slightly higher average expenses the days after the race. In 2025, you can probably expect to pay around 800 euros for the application process without media licenses, probably more than 300 euros in equipment. Travel will vary, but if you are in Europe, consider 400 euros as a starting point. And during and after the race, it's probably 40 to 60 euros per day for food and 45 to 70 euros per stay in hotels. That's it for this video. If you found it helpful, I've already posted other videos that might help you prepare for TCR.